From the moment a grape gets picked, it is on the clock. Those first few hours at the winery are just this whirlwind of decisions that are going to shape everything about the final wine. So today, we're going to dive into those first absolutely critical steps in a red grape's journey, all the way from the vineyard right up to the fermentation tank. Think about it. When you see a glass of red wine, the first thing you notice is that deep, beautiful color. But have you ever stopped to wonder where that color actually comes from? You might think the juice itself is red, but the real answer? Well, that's what makes red wine red wine. And here it is, the big secret. The juice of most red grapes, it's actually clear. The real key is skin contact. See, red wine gets its identity, its whole personality, from fermenting the juice with the grape skins. This process is called maceration, and it's where all the magic happens. It's how the wine pulls out its color, so many of its complex flavors, and those tannins that give it that structure, that texture on your tongue. Okay, so that whole incredible process has to start somewhere. And that somewhere is, of course, out in the vineyard. The very first decision a winemaker has to make is a huge one. How in the world do you get those precious grapes off the vine? We're going to use this diagram as a roadmap for this whole journey. And as you can see, our story kicks off right here at step 1, the harvest. Honestly, everything that comes after this depends on the quality and the care that's taken right at this initial stage. And boom, right out of the gate, the winemaker is staring down this fundamental choice. Do we go with tradition or do we go with technology? Are they going to rely on the careful, delicate touch of a human hand or the sheer speed and efficiency of a machine? This one decision is going to have a huge impact on the grapes that show up at the winery door. And here you can see exactly what those two paths look like. Over on the left, that's manual harvesting. You've got pickers carefully selecting and cutting every single bunch by hand. And on the right, that's the mechanical harvester, this powerful machine that's becoming more and more common, especially in really big vineyards. So let's really break down the trade-offs here. Hand picking, it's all about precision. Pickers can just leave behind any unripe or damaged grapes, and they make sure the good stuff arrives at the winery totally intact. It's also the only way to go on those super steep hillsides where a machine just can't operate. But it's slow and it is expensive. Now, mechanical harvesting is incredibly fast. You can even harvest in the middle of the night when it's cool to keep the grapes fresh. The downside? It's not nearly as selective, and it can sometimes break the grape skins, which risks oxidation. That's when oxygen starts messing with the flavors before you want it to. So really, the winemaker is always trying to strike that perfect balance between quality control, speed, and cost. All right, so the grapes have been picked, and they've just arrived at the winery. Now the real prep work gets underway. It is time to get them ready for their big transformation. Let's look back at our map. We are now officially at step 2, destemming and crushing. This is where we take those whole bunches of grapes and turn them into the mixture of juice, skins, and seeds that winemakers just call must. This is a classic 1-2 punch. First, the grapes are run through a destemmer, which, you guessed it, separates the berries from the stems. This is so important because those stems can add these really nasty, bitter, vegetable flavors to the wine. You do not want that. Next up, the grapes are crushed. Now, the goal here isn't to just smash them to bits, but to gently break the skins so that the juice gets released and we can kickstart that all-important skin contact. But hold on, before we even get to the destemming and crushing, a lot of high-end wineries add another little step, another layer of quality control. Because whether you pick by hand or by machine, some unwanted guests can sneak into the harvest bins, and you've got to get them out. And this is where modern technology is it's incredible. On an optical sorter, grapes fly along a conveyor belt, while these high-speed cameras scan every single one. An onboard computer uses what they call artificial vision to spot anything that isn't a perfect grape. We're talking leaves, bugs, underripe berries, and then it just blasts it off the line with a super precise puff of air. I mean, talk about next-level quality control. So, our grapes are harvested, sorted, destemmed, and crushed. They're now this soupy mixture, this must. You'd think, okay, it's time to add yeast and get this party started, right? Well, not so fast. A lot of winemakers sneak in one more really clever step. So here's the puzzle for the winemaker. They want to start pulling out all that beautiful color and those delicate aromas from the skins right away. But if you just let the must sit there, the wild yeasts that are naturally on the grapes will start to ferment. So how do you hit the pause button on fermentation, but still get all the benefits of that skin contact? The answer is you put it on ice. Literally this process is called a cold soak. By dropping the temperature way down, often using dry ice, winemakers can let the skins and juice just hang out together for anywhere from 3 to 10 days. The cold basically puts the yeast to sleep, so fermentation can't start. This allows for this really gentle extraction of color and aroma compounds before any alcohol even enters the picture. And using dry ice for this, it's just brilliant for a few reasons. First, it cools everything down super fast. Second, as that solid dry ice turns into carbon dioxide gas, it creates this protective blanket over the must, pushing out all the oxygen. This not only stops oxidation, which would kill the flavors, but it also creates an environment where nasty bacteria and other wild yeasts just can't survive. It's a win-win. Okay, so after this little chilly waiting period, our grape must is finally ready for the main event, fermentation. But that brings up one last really critical question in this first phase. Where is this transformation actually going to happen? Let's go back to our map one last time. We followed the grapes from the harvest, through the crushing, and now all the way to step 3. They're being pumped into their new home, the fermentation tank. And believe me, the vessel you choose has a massive impact on the wine. Each material has its own personality. Wood, it's traditional, it can add some really nice flavor complexity, but wow, it is hard to clean and manage. Stainless steel is kind of the modern standard because it's totally neutral and you have perfect temperature control. It's like a blank canvas. And then you have concrete, an old school classic that's making a huge comeback. It insulates really well and lets in just a tiny bit of oxygen without adding any flavor of its own. But it's not just about the material anymore. There's a radical new shape that's showing up in wineries, and it is totally challenging how people think about fermentation. I mean, just look at this. On the left, you've got the familiar, practical shape of a modern tank. We've all seen that. But on the right, well, that looks more like something you'd find in a modern art museum. It's the concrete egg. Which, of course, leads to the obvious question. Beyond just looking cool, of all the shapes in the world, why an egg? The physics behind this is actually fascinating. It's designed with no corners, and that smooth, curved form encourages this natural, slow-moving vortex inside the fermenting wine. This gentle current constantly stirs the lees, that's the expired yeast cells that settle on the bottom, back up into the wine. What this does is add texture and complexity all on its own, naturally, without any need for mechanical stirring. It's pretty amazing. So you see, from the vineyard all the way to the vat, every single step is a choice. Handpicking versus machine, a cold soak versus jumping right in, steel versus a concrete egg. Every one of these decisions has guided the grape to this exact point. And now, as it rests in its chosen vessel, the quiet, magical work of fermentation is about to begin. And all these choices, they're finally going to reveal themselves in the glass.